Someone called you intimidating last week, maybe last month, maybe it's been happening for years. And the confusing part? You weren't doing anything. You weren't raising your voice. You weren't taking up space. You weren't even trying to make an impression. You were just there, being yourself. And somehow, that was enough to make people uncomfortable. If you've ever been called cold, intense, hard to read, or a lot, without understanding why, this video is going to explain something most people spend years never being able to put into words. Because here's what nobody talks about. The people who intimidate others the most are usually the ones who aren't trying to at all. And there's actual psychology behind why it keeps happening to you. Here are 7 signs you're one of them. Your silence is comfortable for you, and deeply uncomfortable for everyone else. Most people treat silence like something broke. Like if nobody's talking, something went wrong and someone needs to fix it fast. Research published in Psychological Science found that even a 4-second pause in conversation triggers a measurable spike in anxiety. People feel it physically, and their instinct is to fill the gap, usually by saying something they didn't plan to say, something they'll regret later. You don't have that reflex. When you go quiet, you're thinking, processing, taking the conversation seriously enough to not just say the first thing that comes to mind. To you, that silence is doing something. To the person across from you, it feels like a verdict, like you're deciding something about them, and they don't know what the verdict is. So they call you cold. They call you intense. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your comfort in quiet made them confront their own discomfort. And that's not something most people know how to handle. You don't engage in drama, and people read that as a threat. There's an unspoken rule in most social environments. The louder your emotions, the more people trust you. Drama isn't just conflict. It's how people signal that they're readable, predictable, safe to be around. When you skip that performance, not because you don't feel things, but because you process before you react, people don't know what to do with you. They can't get a rise out of you. They can't guilt you into something. And someone they can't rattle, can't pressure, and can't predict, that makes them nervous. One woman at her job learned this firsthand. A coworker kept pushing her to engage, to react, to give them something to work with. She didn't. She stayed calm, held her ground, and said 4 words that ended it completely. I'm not your entertainment. I'm your coworker. Not aggressive, not loud, just clear. And the coworker had absolutely no idea how to respond to that, because the usual tools, guilt, pressure, social disapproval, didn't land. And that is exactly what makes quiet people so unsettling to the wrong ones. You ask real questions, and people feel seen before they're ready. When someone asks how you're doing, the expected answer is fine. Both people know it means nothing. Small talk is a social handshake, not a conversation. It says I'm friendly, I'm safe, I won't go anywhere, you're not ready to go. You skip it. Not to make anyone uncomfortable, your mind just genuinely wants to go somewhere real. So you ask one question the other person wasn't expecting. Something that cuts past the surface. Their energy shifts, their answer gets careful. And later, they describe you to someone else as kind of intense. You were just curious. But to them, it felt like exposure. Research on how introverts process information shows they tend to move through longer, more complex neural pathways before they respond, meaning they absorb more before they speak. What looks like hesitation from the outside is actually depth. And when that depth shows up in the form of a question, a real one, the other person feels it before they can explain why. It doesn't feel like curiosity to them. It feels like being seen before they were ready to be seen. And for most people, that is a deeply uncomfortable place to be. You stay calm when everyone else is escalating, and they read your composure as contempt. This one cuts deep, because the truth is almost the exact opposite of what people assume. You feel things, possibly more than most, but you've learned, maybe through experience, maybe through years of watching what happens when emotions take over, that reacting in the heat of the moment almost always makes things worse. So you stay grounded. You respond from the rational part of your mind, not the reactive one. Psychotherapists who study introvert-extrovert conflict have found a consistent pattern. The introvert stays logical. The extrovert reads that calm, as they don't care. And the conversation falls apart, not because of the original issue, but because one person needed to feel emotionally matched, and the other person didn't perform that. So your self-control looks like coldness. Your composure looks like contempt. The very thing you worked hard to build, the ability to stay steady under pressure, to not blow things up, to be the person who doesn't make everything worse, gets misread as indifference by the person who needed you to lose it alongside them. You're not cold. You just refuse to perform distress to make someone else feel less alone in theirs. And that, to a lot of people, is genuinely disorienting. You read people before you say a word, and they can feel it. Before you open your mouth, you've already noticed things most people miss. The slight hesitation before someone answered. The shift in posture when a certain topic came up. What they said carefully versus what slipped out without thinking. You're not doing it on purpose. Your brain just takes in the full picture before responding to any part of it. Dr. Jennifer Kahnweiler, who has researched introverted leadership for years, calls this one of the most underestimated social skills, the ability to read a room without needing to dominate it. But here's what's happening on the other side. We're wired to notice when someone is paying close attention to us, and we automatically assume it means we're being judged. Even when you're genuinely just paying attention, the other person feels like they're under a microscope. They get uncomfortable. They call you unnerving. They tell someone later that there's something about you they can't quite put their finger on. What they actually mean is you saw something they weren't ready to show, and they couldn't figure out how you did it without saying a word. You have a filter, and people can sense they haven't passed it yet. You don't let everyone in. Not because you think you're better than anyone, but because real connection takes energy, and you'd rather invest that energy in people who are actually worth it. So you watch before you open up. You wait before you trust. You don't hand out warmth like it costs you nothing. Because for you, it does cost something. Most people sense that filter within the first few minutes of meeting you, and how they react to it tells you almost everything about them. Some people respect it. They understand that trust is something you build, not something you hand over at the door. They're comfortable with that. Others feel it as rejection. They quietly decide you think you're too good for them, and they've already made up their mind about you before they've given you a real chance. Psychologist research on strong personal boundaries, the kind worn naturally, without apology, shows that this kind of discernment is often misread as arrogance by people who've never had to earn someone's respect before. But what they're picking up on isn't arrogance. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows their own worth, and who isn't about to give unlimited access just to make a stranger comfortable. You don't need their approval. And nothing is more destabilizing than that. This is the one that runs the deepest, and it's the one that drives everything else on this list. Most social dynamics run on an invisible exchange. You validate me, I validate you. Approval becomes a kind of currency, and whoever can give it or withhold it holds quiet power over everyone who wants it. It's the game most people are playing without realizing they're playing it. You don't play it. You don't need the room to like you to feel okay being in it. You can sit alone with your own thoughts and feel genuinely content, not performing contentment for an audience, actually experiencing it. You can leave a conversation without needing to know how it landed. You can let someone be disappointed in you without it unraveling your sense of self. To someone whose self-worth depends on external validation, that is not just unusual, it is threatening. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because the tools don't work on you. The subtle social pressure, the quiet disapproval, the expectation that you'll make yourself smaller to fit in, none of it lands. And when none of the usual tools work, people don't know what to do. So they call it intimidating. Clinical psychologist Carla Marie Manley found that the people we find most unsettling are usually the ones who expose our own insecurities, the fear that we don't measure up to someone who seems genuinely self-sufficient. You're not trying to trigger that. You're just not performing neediness. But in a world where almost everyone does, the absence alone is enough to make people deeply uncomfortable. Here's what it all comes down to. Being called intimidating isn't a flaw. It's not a compliment either. It's what happens when someone meets a person they can't control, can't predict, and can't read, and they don't have the self-awareness to realize that's their problem, not yours. You're not cold, you're not broken, you're not too much, or not enough. You just don't perform for people. And in a world where almost everyone does, that alone makes you rare. The people who found you intimidating weren't responding to something wrong with you. They were responding to someone who didn't need them. And the right people, when you find them, figure that out. And they stay anyway. Which one of these hit closest to home? Drop it in the comments. And if someone in your life has spent years being called intimidating without understanding why, send this to them.